Good evening, I'm Ryan Bonazzo. Welcome to Issues and Answers, the 2022 Provincial Candidates Debate for Thunder Bay-Atikokan. We're coming to you from the traditional territory of the Fort William First Nation as signatory to the Robinson Superior Treaty of 1850. We have representatives from three of the parties on your ballot here today. They are, in alphabetical order, Green Party candidate Eric Arner, Rob Barrett, representing the Liberal Party, and Judith Monteith-Farrell of the NDP. We were expecting PC candidate Kevin Holland to be in attendance here today, despite twice receiving confirmation that he would be here to participate. We were informed just a few hours before taping that he will not be in attendance. Well, before we get into the debate portion of the program, let's hear some opening statements from each of the candidates here in attendance. Green Party candidate Eric Arner, you're up first. You have 45 seconds.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you to my fellow candidates who have shown up to all of the debates. Some have not, and I'm not a politician, generally speaking. I'm just sort of an average guy, but I'm a parent, I'm a teacher, and I saw the government that we've had recently failing us. You know, I saw it failing our students, our nurses, and our elderly, and I really want to step it up a bit and take some action. And, you know, who's going to make plans for the future for our kids and for the environment? So then I saw our leader, Mike Schreiner, for the Green Party, making a big difference in Queen's Park and collaborating with other parties. And I thought, man, that's a great example, and I'd like to be a part of that.
Thank you, candidate Arner. Next up, Rob Barrett of the Liberal Party. 45 seconds on the clock to you.
Thank you, Ryan, my fellow candidates, and those viewing. I feel very excited about the possibility of serving the people who live, work, and play in Thunder Bay-Atikokan. After 3 weeks of telephone calls and door knocking, it's clear to me that whomever has the privilege of serving the people of this riding, they had better be prepared. They'd better be prepared to listen, they better be prepared to understand, and they better be prepared to work together with those who care, along with the subject matter experts. People feel disengaged, disconnected, and disenchanted with the lack of action they see. Should I have the privilege of serving the people of Thunder Bay-Atikokan, I can assure you that I will be accessible, I will be knowledgeable, and I will work with you to create a voice for the North once again. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Barrett. We'll now conclude with the NDP's Judith Monteith-Farrell. 45 seconds for your opening statement.
Hello, everyone. And it's been my great honor and privilege to be the member of Provincial Parliament for Thunder Bay-Atikokan over these past 4 years. I have been your voice at Queen's Park. Together, we have been through some difficult times, and we are looking forward to a better future. What I hear from folks, though, and it's very disturbing, is they have lost hope, and we need a government that puts people first. People ask me, well, how do you keep on going, and what's your inspiration? And I say, I think of Jack Layton's words, where love is better than anger, hope is better than fear, and optimism is better than despair. Let us be loving, hopeful, and optimistic.
Thank you, candidate Monteith-Farrell. We're going to take a quick break now. When we return, we will begin the question and debate portion of the program. Issues and Answers. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to Issues and Answers, the provincial candidates debate for Thunder Bay-Atikokan. During this portion of the program, I'll pose a direct question to one of the candidates. After allowing that candidate about 1 minute to respond uninterrupted, we'll then open that question up to the floor for debate. So the first question is about cost of living. Liberal candidate Rob Barrett, it goes to you. We have seen the cost of living go up drastically, particularly in the last few months. Residents don't have to look any further than their receipt from the grocery store or the gas pump. Many are struggling to make ends meet. How will you help them get ahead?
The Ontario Liberal Party platform is very committed to helping everybody across Ontario deal with affordability, beginning with prepared meals, $20 and under, removing the HST off of that, creating a minimum wage with a regional living wage, access to portable benefits for mental health, dental, and medical, and 10 paid sick days. We will also look at a 4-day work week to work with work-life balance. We'll eliminate corporate taxes for 2 years for small businesses who have struggled under the pandemic. And we will also look at building affordable housing. We will build 1.5 million new homes over the next 10 years, which will in turn create 150,000 new jobs. With that, we'll also work very closely with municipalities and create the Ontario Home Building Corporation to finance and build these homes.
Thank you, candidate Barrett. We'll now open that question up to all of the candidates. We're talking cost of living. How will your party help people get ahead? Who wants to jump in?
I'd like to jump in with the cost of living has skyrocketed under the present government, and it wasn't a piece of cake for many folks before that because of low ODSP and OW rates. We also had seniors who I hear from daily telling me that they can't afford to live in their homes. So we have programs in our platform like deferring taxes and helping seniors stay in their homes with credits for renovations and those kinds of issues. Affordable housing is so important that we need to build affordable housing. The plan that the Conservatives has is ridiculous. It doesn't meet the needs, and we know that those housing needs have been there for a long time. We need to address minimum wage, and we need to make sure that when people have minimum wage, that it's enough for them to live on, not a poverty rate.
I want to give candidate Arner a chance to respond. And remember, candidates, you feel free to jump in at any point during this open debate portion.
Thank you, Ryan. The Green Party is very committed to doubling ODSP and OW right away. We know those folks are struggling the most, and we need to help them right away. We also want to introduce a grocery code of ethics because some of the there's a few big companies that control our food sources and distribution in Canada, and we need to make sure that there's no price fixing in those areas, and that has been an ongoing difficulty, and we want to fix that because that can lower prices for everyone across the province. We also want to get people off the pumps. There can be little gimmicks here and there to lower it by a few cents, but we know the gas just keeps going up. It has been for decades, and it will continue to do so. We want to also create 182,000 permanently affordable rental homes in the province and bring back or create a digital Main Street program, expand it so that there's a distribution. That way local businesses can compete with big online stores. And we want to support those local businesses by reducing or eliminating red tape so they can navigate the difficult systems that we have out there.
Candidates, any final words on this cost of living before we move on?
We will also be relaunching the basic income project, as well as making retroactive childcare payments of $2,750 per family to address the Doug Ford cuts, and also looking at $10 a day childcare.
And we have to remember that the Doug Ford government is full of gimmicks to try to, and says that that's putting money back in the people's pockets, but often it's temporary, often it's only in some people's pockets, and so it's important that we need a platform that will in fact address everyone's needs.
Okay, so some shots fired at the PC party, and again, our PC candidate was invited here today, unfortunately is not in attendance. So let's move on now to health care, and this question is for NDP candidate Judith Monteith-Farrell. Health care is the biggest cost in the provincial budget, yet patients are plagued with long wait times. Here in the Northwest, there aren't enough doctors or nurses or even ambulances out on the road. How will your party address the crisis?
You know, during my time in this job for the last 4 years, the main focus I heard is the problems with healthcare. And what we hear time and again is that this was a problem that existed before the PC government came into effect. There was freezes in hospital budgets, there was freezes in mental health funding, and there was a failure. So what happened is when the PC government came in, rather than making it better, they continued to cut or freeze budgets. And that did not help the situation. What we have in our platform is a plan to, in fact, properly fund healthcare finally in this country and bring pharmacare, dental care, and mental health under OHIP, because we need to look at a healthcare system, not a sick care system. We need to actually address that. We have plans to assist doctors, recruitment,
Thank
with
you,
nurses.
Candidate Monteith-Farrell. I want to open this question up now
I'll talk more later.
to the rest of the candidates. We're talking healthcare. How will you and your party fix the crisis? Anyone is free to weigh in.
Well, I'd like to weigh in. We're committed to actually hiring a lot more nurses, 33,000 nurses, which sounds like a lot. It is a lot. 10,000 of those would be dedicated to Northern Ontario. We want to create more nurse practitioner programs to support. We have a lot of localities that are remote that can't get the proper health care, and we need to support those localities. That also includes in Indigenous communities where we have Indigenous-led healthcare that's funded and supported by the province. And that's been sadly lacking, not just for the last 4 years, but for quite a long time, and we really need to step up with that.
I want to give candidate Barrett a chance to respond. Both parties, now both of your counterparts here have said that healthcare was broken while the Liberals were in power as well.
Yes, and we could contest that. You know, and certainly one of the things we did even before the Ford government cut and slashed was to bring in programs like nurse practitioners to try to ensure that everybody has access to professional medical help. We're prepared to, over the next 2 years, invest $1 billion into additional capacity, thereby clearing the surgical backlog and set maximum wait times. We also want to increase the number of family doctors, nurses, and practitioners. So we're going to be hiring over 100,000 of those professionals over the next 6 years. We also will increase to 15 community health centers. We're going to create over 3,000 new hospital beds. We're going to ensure all Ontarians have access to prescription drug coverage and private benefit plans. And we'll expand coverage to induce continuous glucose monitoring and access to a doctor or nurse practitioner within 24 hours, as well as access to mental health services on an appropriate basis.
Candidate Barrett, I want to give some of the others a chance to weigh in.
It's actually very hard not to, we don't want to interrupt our colleagues here, but I really have to say that these things, we all agree that the healthcare system was broken and is broken and needs significant investment. And that investment's possible. There is the finances there. We need to, I've seen people writhing on the streets when they're going to our emergency rooms because they have abscessed teeth. And nothing is addressed. They're given a prescription for antibiotics that they may or may not be able to afford. And there is they are in the system suffering. And when people are suffering on our streets, that's something wrong. And this could have been addressed a long time ago, but hasn't been. And so we need to ensure that those things are in place. Same with diabetes care. There are people who are not taking their medications or having their medications. We don't cover it properly. We have a hodgepodge of programming that was under the Liberal system that didn't address it properly, and the Conservatives made it worse.
Candidate Arner, I want to give you the final word before we move on.
Thank you. I know we have a lot of issues with our healthcare system, with the wages being frozen for nurses and a lack of oversight for care in long-term homes. But another thing that hasn't gotten enough attention lately is the opioid crisis, which is at an all-time high. We've seen a huge spike in the Thunder Bay area, and we really need to expand and cover and go into that deeply. You know, we need people who have been through addiction and can lead us
And
through
we're the only
and
party that has
contemplate.
committed to a mental health crisis center here in Thunder Bay and to the proposal, that community proposal for detox beds. So that is a commitment our party has made.
We have a housing first approach for this, which is 60,000 supportive housing units that will take care of people who are in the deepest need, who can be helped. We can help those people. It's not a criminal thing, it's a health issue, and we can help those people, and we need to make a big difference now.
Candidates, let's move on, and we're heading right back to Green candidate Eric Arner. We're going to talk violent crime. In recent years, we've seen a dramatic increase in gang-related activity and arrests here in the Northwest. Area police services say gang members from Southern Ontario are coming into the region faster than officers can arrest them. How will your party address violent crime in Northwestern Ontario?
I think there's a couple of issues with the crime and the policing in the area. One of the reasons that people are coming up here, we've seen a lot of it in the papers that there's arrests for these big drug busts. And one of the approaches that needs to be taken is the decriminalization of these things. We can take it out of the hands of criminals. We can take the people who are struggling with the addictions and get them into mental health and health supports and into supportive housing. And we also know that we need to make some corrections to our policing in Thunder Bay. And I'm not an expert on the subject, but there seems to be a trying and failing approach so far. We need to revisit that. And that is a municipal issue, but the province can help and support that and talk to the people here and say, what do we need to do? Maybe it's a collaborative effort with NAN Police and Bay-Atikokan Nation, or, I'm not sure, because part of that is an over-policing of Indigenous people as well.
Thank you, Candidate Arner. Let's open that question up to all of the candidates now. Violent crime, what is the plan to address it here in the region?
Well, basically, many of us have been affected by this directly. I think it was 3.5 years ago that one of these houses took place where the drug traffickers actually took possession of one of my neighbor's house and ended up a rival gang arrived and murdered one of the individuals right on the street. So this is huge. It's happening over and over again. And the way that we're going to get through this, similar to what Eric was saying, is we're going to have to work closely with police. We're going to have to work closely with our communities and our municipal leaders. And we have to get ahead of this, because right now I think police services is overwhelmed here in Thunder Bay, and we need more help.
I think in discussion with people on the street, and they are afraid to leave their homes. Many people who have lived in more established neighborhoods are telling me at the door that they're afraid to leave their homes at night. And that is not something that needs to be happening here in Thunder Bay. Those are neighborhoods I grew up in, and that wasn't the case when we grew up. When I talk to the chiefs of police, the police associations and the OPP, what they say is unless we address the social determinants of health, that is the addictions issues, the mental health issues, we are unable to resource our police properly to address these things on our streets. And they believe that if we address those things, those health things really, that our crime rates will come down, because if we don't have a market for drugs, then the drug dealers won't come here. The other thing is our police has been under-resourced, and the Conservative government failed to give us our portion of guns and gangs kinds of funding that needed to be happening here, because, as we say, people from Southern Ontario are coming up to Northern Ontario, and that's unacceptable.
Candidates, any final words on this violent crime before we head to break?
Just I would add, the Ontario Liberal Party is committed to investing over $300 million towards the prevention, intervention, and treatment of opioid addiction, because we believe that that's an important part of that role, as well as reducing wait times for mental health care. Especially young people have to wait up to 18 months to get in to see a professional. And we're going to train 3,000 new mental health professionals to do mental health and addiction work, and hire 1,000 new mental health professionals to work directly with children to try to address that waiting list.
Okay, thank you, candidates. We are going to take a short break now, and we will be back with more questions and debate as Issues and Answers continues. Welcome back to Issues and Answers, the 2022 provincial candidates debate for Thunder Bay-Atikokan. Our next question goes to Liberal Rob Barrett. We spoke before the break about policing and violent crime. Let's expand that now to all emergency services. Every year, residents see more of their municipal tax dollars go to pay for these services, police, fire, and EMS. That leaves municipalities with two options: cut service or raise taxes. If elected, how will your party help ease that financial burden?
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with Highway 413 that's being proposed by Mr. Ford and his government, but that's a $10 billion project that we would love to scrap. Mr. Ford also has about another $12 billion that the Attorney General is questioning the cautiousness of withholding that. These are the kinds of dollars that should and would go towards reinvesting in not just our frontline professionals, but also our own overall health. Those things cannot be cut. These professionals need to be trained and constantly retrained in terms to how to deal with the more complexities around our health issues and our emergency issues. And they demonstrated a remarkable job during COVID and have continued to do so. And so the last thing our government would be interested in is making any cuts there at all. We would just be reallocating in that investment.
Thank you, Candidate Barrett. Let's open that question up now to the floor. Emergency services and the rising cost for municipalities.
Rising costs for municipalities is something that we hear about because we hear people unable to afford to stay in their homes. And so we know that we cannot continue to raise municipal taxes, and the way we're considering that is indeed getting rid of the useless projects that Doug Ford has on the agenda for billions of dollars for highways where no one needs, that are bad for the environment in our greenbelt, but also working with our municipal partners in a meaningful way. They've asked for very specific relief. And we need to ensure that they have the proper funding. They've not had the proper funding in place, and so that's part of the NDP platform. We need to know that the emergency services need to be properly funded, and that should be a mandate of a provincial government because it's part of healthcare. And it's unfair to load those onto the municipal taxpayer.
Candidate Arner.
Our emergency services, our frontline workers, our nurses, we've been withholding, allowing them to bargain for a proper wage. We need to obviously allow our heroes, so we're calling them, let's treat them fairly and respectfully, unlike the PC government that we've had for the last 4 years. And we can stop downloading to the municipalities. We've been trying to push, as a province, more and more of the responsibilities down to the municipalities, costing them more and more money, raising local taxes for people on their houses. And we can stop sending that money down to the 905 region where big donors are taking advantage of it and where big expensive highways that we don't need are being built.
And those emergency
we all agree on that.
Sorry, the emergency services really do need support for their mental health, and that's something that hasn't been addressed properly. We need sufficient resources to assist them because of the tremendous burden these people are facing. They need mental health services, and so that should be something that is above and beyond a municipality's bill.
Candidates, any final words before we move on?
I would just say that another big part of the calls for our frontline workers have to do with either elder care, seniors who are trying to stay in their own home without supports, or people with mental health and opiate addictions. And our platform is one that wants to invest and prevent all of that and help seniors stay at home in their own homes by making railings and stairs, different things that they might need help with, more affordable. And as I said before, really investing in mental health and addictions prevention and intervention models. Those are so important.
And the problem with some of the funding models that are in place to assist seniors to stay at home and to assist with assisted devices for people is that they were, you pay up front and then you have to be reimbursed, or it's a maze of kind of complicated factions that are in place to have people access those things. And so what we need is things like that are in our platform that we actually pay up front and ensure that people can stay in their homes.
Candidates, I'd like to move on to the economy and jobs, and this is a question for NDP candidate Judith Monteith-Farrell. And I want to talk specifically about Thunder Bay's Alstom plant, one of the major employers in this riding. And over the last few years, we've seen hundreds of employees laid off from that plant. The government contracts currently in place aren't enough to bring many of those employees back. What is your and your government's plan to secure more work for the facility?
Well, working with Bombardier and then later now with Alstom, talking about what was the plan is we are building and planning mass transit here in Ontario, and we have a tremendous amount of money invested and continue the need is there in Southern Ontario for this mass transit. What we need to ensure is that we have a Made in Ontario plan. And what Doug Ford did is actually he reduce the amount of content that is required in the contract with the plant that would ensure work at the plant. So it's simple that if we put that requirement for Made in Ontario, we would ensure that the money, public dollars that are being paid for public transit would actually be invested in Thunder Bay and in Ontario and not somewhere else, not out of country.
Thank you very much, candidate Monteith-Farrell. Let's open this question up to the floor now. Thunder Bay's Alstom plant or economy and jobs more broadly.
Well, I've been wondering about the Alstom plant myself. I know I see it in the news, shrinking, disappearing. I see that streetcars are being repaired in North Bay instead of Thunder Bay. We could be doing that here. And I do wonder, I know why hasn't the official opposition been able to work with the Ford government to get more contracts renewed up here? It's a great opportunity we have here. We really want to have more mass transit vehicles, and we need to push for that, and that needs to be expanded. And all we've seen is it shrink almost to nothing now.
Under the Liberal government, there were 1,200 jobs at Alstom, and now there's about 400. And to speak to both of my colleagues' statements, there needs to be that commitment to manufacturing here in Thunder Bay for it to be sustainable. And we know we have good workers, a good product, but Mr. Ford has again sabotaged the system that was in place. And I don't want to put words in Kevin Holland's mouth, but he should be really here defending that. That's a concern that impacts everybody, because it's not just that particular workplace. It's all the spin-off kind of work that we get as a result of that as well. So we're losing in a multitude of different ways, and we can directly point our finger at the PCs.
And talking to the Alstom plant is that what they were saying is when I said to them, what is the things that because if the Ontario government, under the Ford government isn't going to give you those contracts, what other contracts do you want to bring in here? And they said, we need a commitment to assist us with things like the plant and making it more affordable, like making it more eco-friendly. Also, because that's a big seller in many countries, we need the commitment to looking at retooling and recruiting workers. And that is something that Conservative government hasn't done here locally and needs to do, because we are losing folks. When we have these breaks, we'll have, they will have work soon, but not for everyone, not for the 1,200 that used to be there. And so that commitment is really important, and we like to see that moving forward.
And candidate Monteith-Farrell, we heard candidate Arner suggest that your party as official opposition should have been pushing harder. What say you to that? Well,
I think we know what a majority government is in Ontario, and I believe that I was a very strong advocate trying to work across lines, and having the transport minister standing up and actually agreeing with me, but not committing and actually doing the work that needed to get done.
Candidates, any final words on jobs and the economy?
With the Ontario Liberal Party's pledge of a buck a ride, one of the things we're looking at is removing 400,000 vehicles off of our roadways. And in doing so, we're going to be putting more emphasis on public transit. And therefore, we really need workplaces like Alstom here in Thunder Bay that are going to be able to respond to that kind of demand in an eco-friendly way.
And they will be able to respond because they do have excellent workers there. We need
Agreed.
to ensure that, you know, the government, if the Ford government, as it did in the past, gave those jobs to other places.
And Candidate Arner, 30 seconds.
I think we also, I mean, lowering transit fares is awesome. It's great to get more people into buses, you know, on trains and places where you have those. You know, we know a lot of areas out here we don't have those kind of services. We do have some bus service between towns and cities, and we need to look closely at that and adjust those schedules so that they can be more usable for people. One idea is maybe looking at Manitoulin Island. They have a bus service which is almost a reservation type system where you can book ahead and then they can adjust the schedule according to when people need buses. Greens also want to, of course, electrify buses, and that's something for the further into the future.
Thank you, Candidate Arner, and thank you to all of the candidates. We're going to take another quick break. Issues and Answers. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to Issues and Answers, the 2022 provincial candidates debate for Thunder Bay-Atikokan. Our next question is on a topic that we've heard alluded to already, but let's dive into it a little deeper, and that is the opioid crisis, and it goes to Green candidate Eric Arner. Opioid-related deaths have surged since the beginning of the pandemic, and the rates in Northern Ontario are approximately 3 times higher than elsewhere in the province. And while new detox beds have been announced for the region, experts say more needs to be done. What will you and your party do to address the opioid crisis?
I'm glad you brought that question up, Ryan. I know it has been brought up in the news that we haven't actually talked about this enough in recent debates or in press releases and things, and it is big. It's impacting a lot of families. You know, imagine losing a member of your family, and your family has been through a lot up to that point as well, based on the struggle that those people have had. We need to act quickly, and the Greens want to add 60,000 permanent supportive housing units with wraparound services. 10% of those will be for people with complex needs, safe consumption and treatment sites. And I think with the mental health supports put into place quickly and being available to more people more quickly, available with your OHIP card, you don't have to pay by credit card, you don't have to wait for a year to get in to see someone for mental health. That can help avoid getting to that point. But in the meantime, the people that are already struggling, and that includes the families, they need support right away. And the Greens are very dedicated to that.
Thank you, Candidate Arner. Let's open it up now to the rest of the floor. Candidates, the opioid crisis, how will you address it?
Well, the Ontario Liberal Party is committed to having more mental health workers, of course, in emergency rooms and much more responsive. They're committed to building 15,000 more supportive homes targeting mental health and addictions. In addition, it's about collaboration. It's about working with our municipalities and subject matter experts and people who care, knowing that we can make some tremendous inroads. So I'm speaking specifically about Norwest Community Health Centre here in Thunder Bay, as well as the work of Dr. Abby Sprakes through Lakehead University, who have looked at the consumption of many of these opioids and helping those who are struggling with addiction to determine whether they're in taking drugs that are actually safe. And what we're finding out is they're not. There's other drugs mixed in that can be quite lethal, and we all know about fentanyl. So I think by all of us working together, we can actually make some tremendous inroads.
Community, I agree that a community addressing this issue, because the families and the people that have been living with addiction, the lived experience is so important to have their voices. When I participated in walks or have met with families and they talk about their stories, they talk about the need for supportive housing. In our platform, we have that. They talk about decriminalization. They talk about the detox beds that are required. 3,000 people are turned away from detox in our community in Thunder Bay, and in Atikokan, the problem is just as grave. And so that access to mental health crisis centers where people who are experiencing mental health, ensuring that young people and children don't have to wait years sometimes for mental health services and having it come under OHIP, but ensuring that every child that needs help gets it within 30 days. That prevents them self-medicating and going down that road of an opioid crisis. And this is something that affects all parts of our society. The Chamber of Commerce even has begged people to say, let's make this a priority.
Candidates, you all have had a chance to weigh in on this, so I do want to switch gears. I mean, talk about mental health and young people. One of the things that is particularly on the minds of young people is climate change. And I'm going to open this question up to the floor. Many scientists call climate change the biggest challenge of our time. And I mentioned young people, a lot of them feel the same. What will your party do to reduce carbon emissions and address the climate crisis?
The Ontario Liberal Party is committed to, as I said before, the buck a ride. They also want to expand the green belt from 10% to 30% of Ontario's landmass. They want to create 5 new provincial parks, which actually communities will have a say in how those are chosen. They want to plant 800 million new trees over the next 8 years. They want to cut carbon emissions by 50% below 2005 levels by 2030, and they want to divert and recycle 60% of waste from landfills by 2030, as well as 85% by 2050.
I think all three parties...
We want to become a net zero government by 2030.
I think all 3 parties that are sitting here have a commitment to climate change or doing a climate action. Maybe a bit late, some to the table, but at least we know we're going in the right direction. And we know that planting more trees, looking at a cap and trade system that is actually viable, that we, that people, that is something that was in place, that was taken down by the assisting people with electrification of their, if they want to switch to an electric vehicle, and doing all the things that we know need to get done. And we want to have young people's voices at the table by creating a youth advocate for the environment.
Candidate Arner, this is the piece on which your party was built. I'd like you to give you a chance to weigh in.
Thanks. Yeah, we know that the Green Party is known for being environmental, right? Maybe it's been downplayed or lost some of the spotlight lately because we're trying to emphasize that we have a comprehensive plan and we're good in a lot of areas, and we have a lot of inspired and motivated and intelligent people working on plans in all kinds of areas. But the DNA of our party is to make change, to stop climate change. We only have 3 years according to the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. That's this mandate. This has to be, we have to act now. Ontario has 13 million or so people. We can make a huge impact. The most populous province with a lot of pollution that we're putting out. We can really make a difference. And a vote for Greens sends that message that whoever's in power, we want to, make those voices louder that we need to do significant things. And we have the most aggressive plan to get more electric vehicles to more people and more charging stations.
The conservation
even
portion
electric bicycles are available to kids.
I mean, in our plan, we also have a huge piece on conservation because the energy saving is significant. That's a very big deal in a green economy. So if we can give people the funds, not a loan, or a grant to actually improve their properties, we can ensure that they are, viable in a green place to live. Whereas we don't do that, what happens is people can't afford. Most people cannot afford renovations. They can't put new windows in. They can't do those things. And the programs that are in place are very restrictive and very complicated. So we need simple and very direct ways of conserving energy.
Our platform's also committed to cutting through that red tape and expediting any kinds of eco-friendly retrofits. We also really are excited about working with local governments and Indigenous communities to prepare for extreme weather. We've seen that down the Uxbridge, and we've seen it in southeastern Ontario. It's devastating. We know that climate change is here and it's getting worse. So like my two colleagues, we're also very invested in electric vehicles and expanding the availability of charging stations across the province.
Candace, the last topic that I want to touch on here this evening is education. And once again, we will open this up to the floor. What will your party offer to students and educators who have had to endure so much over the last 2+ years of the pandemic? Why are you the best candidate for those who believe that education is a top priority?
Well, I would love to start since I'm actually a teacher. I work in schools, and that's one of the reasons the things that got me motivated to run in this election is to stand up and be a louder voice for the students, for the parents, for the families, for the early childhood educators, and for the educational assistants. We need more support for kids. They've been falling behind over the last 2 years. They're very stressed out. They need more mental health supports. And this is a big deal. And I saw that the Green Party platform is very strong in this section of mental health supports and hiring more educational assistants and ECEs.
I thank Eric for working in this time of during the pandemic, and over the last 4 years, education workers have felt attacked by the government, and that should never happen. Our children and our young people are our most important resource, and our education system should be a jewel. It should be a crown. We are a very rich province. We should have the best education system in the world, and we don't. And we don't because it's been underfunded. It's for years, and it's also had the education workers feeling stressed with large classroom sizes. We need to bring down the sizes of classrooms. We need to have mental health supports because they address the frontline needs of children. Often when parents are too busy because they're working hard, and they see that before anyone.
I want to give candidate Barrett a chance to weigh in.
Thank you. Yeah, we're committed to capping class size to 20 students in all grades. We're going to hire 10,000 new teachers and additional special education workers for every school. We're going to offer classes on mental health as well as financial literacy, taxes, and more. And although we're all familiar with Bernoulli's principle, I think if we learn more about anxiety, depression, and emotional regulation, I think it would go a lot further. We're going to invest an additional $10 billion to repair and build schools. That's important. We know how important ventilation is and proper structures are for our students and teachers who work in those facilities. We've also created an optional grade 13, which is really important, I think, for those, especially those thinking about their future and ready to graduate from high school, to step back and catch their breath. And again, we're going to be talking about things like mental health, civics, financial literacy. These are all really good things going forward. We also want to work with young women and get them into apprenticeships and skilled trades. And we're going to reinvest in OSAP and eliminate interest on student loans.
I mean,
Candidate Monteith-Farrell.
you had, I mean, the Liberals had 15 years, and under that system, they had crumbling schools. There was cuts to the number of schools. There was, you know, and Doug Ford just went down a whole other road with that. And we need to ensure that we have that investment. And saying it now is great, and maybe we've seen the light, but it is something that's been going on for a long time, that this underinvestment in our schools and raising of class sizes. So we need to ensure that we actually prioritize education and education workers to ensure that, you know, for the future, that we actually get it done.
Candidate Barrett, I want to give you a chance to respond. Once again, candidate Monteith-Farrell says your party had 15 years and didn't address the issues.
We could argue back and forth. The reality is, in 2018, the Ontario Liberal Party was decimated. We didn't even have official party status. And in retrospect, it was a really good thing because it forced us to go back to our grassroots and actually consult with people, talk with people, and have meaningful conversations about what we need to do to go forward to be successful. The result of that is over 38,000 new ideas, much of which is represented in our platform and much of which I'm really super
Candidate
excited
Barrett,
about.
unfortunately, I do have to cut you off. We do have to take a break. That brings our debate portion of the program to a close. We'll have more issues and answers right after this. Welcome back to Issues and Answers, the 2022 candidates debate for Thunder Bay-Atikokan. Before we get closing statements from our guests in studio, let's hear from a couple of the other candidates on the ballot. Here now in alphabetical order are Dan Krigger, representing the Ontario Party, and Northern Ontario Party candidate Kenneth Jones.
I'm Dan Krigger, a retired businessman married for 52 years, candidate for the Ontario Party, Thunder Bay-Atikokan. We believe that all human beings have the inalienable right to life, liberty, and private property. We believe the family is the basic building block of a healthy and functional society. We believe in the freedom of conscience, freedom of worship and religion, freedom of speech, freedom of association and assembly. We believe government should promote and foster economic growth and provide all aspects of healthcare equally to all, not just Southern Ontario. When elected, will I take residence in the riding? Of course. Am I aware of the issues here? Yes, of course. The old parties have been telling you the same thing for the past 45 years and nothing has changed. To vote for you and your family, vote Dan Krigger, the Ontario Party. Thank you.
My name is Kenneth Jones, and I'm your candidate for the riding of Thunder Bay-Atikokan for the Northern Ontario Party this June 2nd. My main policies will be to reintroduce some level of honesty into Queen's Park, something we have not seen here in the longest time in Northern Ontario. Every 4 years, they might say a whole bunch of stuff to try to get your vote, but otherwise, democracy for the other parties does not seem to continue after the election. Otherwise, my main policy will be to introduce a manufacturing policy for Northern Ontario. 50% of all our natural resources should be mined and manufactured in Northern Ontario, helping to grow our economy and regrow our population. If I may, otherwise, this will definitely be an interesting election for Ontario, especially with recent happenings. Hold the line, Thunder Bay. Thank you very much. Kenneth Jones, June 2nd.
There are two other candidates as well. Unfortunately, due to the late cancellation from PC candidate Kevin Holland, we did not have time to collect his statement, and New Blue candidate David Tomasini chose not to speak with us during the campaign. Before we wrap, let's hear final words now from our candidates in studio. Green Party candidate Eric Arner, 45 seconds for closing statements.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you for the candidates who showed up today. It's disappointing that others aren't taking part in democracy. The people want to know what you're all about, and their leader is the same for some of the parties. Doug Ford didn't show up 82% of the time, or he diverted the questions to other people. I'm not a regular politician. I'm just a regular guy, mostly, and I just want to get out here and amplify the voices of the people that have a lot of concerns. You know, like during COVID, why we were big box stores were allowed to be open, but small businesses had to close. You know, I think we hear a lot of echoing of Green Party platform stuff among the candidates, and that's great. I do wonder, and I think some people do wonder, how the Liberals do promise a lot, but they can't always deliver. We wonder if the NDP can form a government.
Thank you,
and I
candidate
hope you can
Arner.
vote Green.
Liberal candidate Rob Barrett, 45 seconds to you.
I want to thank Thunder Bay Television for hosting this event. I also want to thank my colleagues who did show, and I would encourage you to read our Ontario Liberal Party platform. The last 4 years, as I said, the party has been seeking feedback. The feedback has created change and hope. If you haven't examined it yet, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Healthcare, education, climate change, affordability, and safe highways, currently all of which have suffered from neglect over the last 4 years, have been addressed in a very pragmatic, meaningful, and reasonably and responsibly costed way. In speaking with many across our city in Atikokan, they feel forgotten about. I will remind Queen's Park about our people, our resources, and our potential, all of which have barely been tapped into.
Thank you, candidate Barrett. Judith Monteith-Farrell of the NDP, 45 seconds.
Thank you, and thank you to my colleagues who came to this debate. And I am too disappointed that that the government candidate, the former government candidate, did not show up. It's really a slap in the face to democracy. And I really appreciate this opportunity to talk about some of the issues, but the platform has so much more. And what I'm also running on is what I did over the last 4 years. And what I did is listen. I spoke for the people of Northwestern Ontario, was able to accomplish some things, and I look forward to 4 more years to try to get more and more done for this region. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Monteith-Farrell, and thank you to all 3 of the candidates who are with us in studio today, and to all of the candidates who put their names forward to represent the people of Thunder Bay-Atikokan at Queen's Park. Finally, thank you at home for watching. Hopefully we've given you something to think about and have helped you make your decision on or before June 2nd. Get out and vote. Have yourselves a great night, everyone.